You're clearly delusional. Gregory Landon's voice boomed across the glass-walled conference room, the words slicing through the heavy silence like a blade. Desperate women like you always make things up. For a moment, everything stopped. I could feel the temperature in the room drop, though the heat in my face flared. No one met my eyes. 12 colleagues sat at the long, polished table, but it felt like I was the only one truly present. I inhaled slowly and pushed the lump in my throat down where it belonged. I had worked at Arcturus Consulting Group for 6 years, from bright-eyed junior analyst to senior leadership on complex accounts. I'd sacrificed nights, relationships, and sanity to earn my reputation: composed, thorough, loyal. And for a while, I believed that was enough to protect me. I was wrong. My name is Maya Kendall, and I'm 33 years old. I built my career in this prestigious Seattle firm on work ethic and restraint. But in that moment, humiliated by my mentor in front of the very team I'd helped lead, I realized my reputation alone wouldn't save me. Not in a system designed to shield men like Gregory Landon. They called it a performance issue. I called it what it really was: retaliation. The meeting ended with the kind of practiced corporate language that barely veiled its intent. I nodded, stood, and packed my leather portfolio without a word. Gregory didn't flinch. In fact, he leaned back in his chair with a satisfied little smirk, like a man who believed he had just won the final round. But what Gregory didn't know, and what none of them suspected, was that I had been preparing for this day for months. 6 months earlier, everything had been perfect. Or so I thought. I'd just been promoted to senior analyst after leading a strategic overhaul of the Chatham account, earning accolades from executive leadership. Gregory had congratulated me with a rare glass of champagne in his corner office, beaming like a proud mentor. "I always knew you were the real thing, Maya," he said that night, raising his glass. "Your rise is just beginning." He was the firm's golden partner, 52, charismatic, and married with 2 daughters. When I first joined Arcturus, Gregory took me under his wing, offering guidance, exposure, and mentorship. For years, he had been the person I trusted most in this building, which is why the first message hit me like a blindside punch. It was a Thursday night in February, nearly 9:30 p.m. I was polishing slides for a global expansion pitch when my phone buzzed with a text. "You look beautiful when you're focused. I've been watching you from my office." I stared at the screen. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A text meant for his wife? But the words felt calculated. There was no emoji, no laughter in the tone, just unsettling directness. I didn't respond. I told myself it was a one-off. He was tired, maybe drunk, and certainly not serious. But the messages continued. Subtle at first. Comments about my clothes, hair, my glow. Then questions about my personal life. Did I live alone? Did I cook for myself every night? Something in my gut twisted. This wasn't mentorship. This was a slow shift in the balance of power, so I started documenting. At first, I saved the texts in a private folder. Then I took screenshots and uploaded them to a cloud drive only I could access. I even installed a call recording app and started noting our conversations, especially the ones that took place after hours or behind closed doors. Still, I tried to keep things professional. Gregory was powerful, influential. My career was on an upward track, and I didn't want to derail it over something that, at the time, felt more uncomfortable than criminal. But by March, his comments had escalated. And worse, he started requesting private career meetings. At first, I attended without hesitation. He was my mentor, after all. But those meetings became more frequent, more personal, and always after hours, when the building was nearly empty. One evening, while standing near the break room printer, Gregory leaned in close. Close enough that I could smell the leather of his jacket and the faint scotch on his breath. "You know, Maya," he said, his voice low. "Your future here depends on how well we work together. I hope you understand what I mean." His hand brushed my arm deliberately. I stepped back. That night, I called my sister Danielle, a corporate attorney in San Francisco. She didn't mince words. "Start a file. Every interaction, every text, every voicemail. Don't leave a single thing undocumented." I wished I'd done it sooner. The final straw came in April. It was raining outside. A slow, gray Seattle drizzle. I was reviewing quarterly analytics when Gregory sent something I can't forget. This time, it wasn't just inappropriate. It was explicit. A photo. An accompanying message so graphic, my hands shook as I added it to the now 300-plus entries in my growing archive. That afternoon, I requested a meeting with Michelle Tran, the firm's HR director. I arrived with printed screenshots and a quiet, pounding heart. Michelle seemed concerned. She took notes. She nodded. "This is serious, Maya. We'll launch an immediate investigation. Please try to avoid Gregory in the meantime." For 2 weeks, I heard nothing. When I followed up, Michelle blinked at me like I was a stranger. "I don't have any record of that meeting," she said, flipping through empty files. The documents were gone, like the meeting had never happened. That's when I knew. Gregory's influence ran deeper than I had imagined. They weren't just dismissing my complaint. They were preparing to erase me completely. But they underestimated me. They thought I'd cry, panic, or go quietly. What I did next changed everything. Before Gregory Landon's texts turned vile, before HR turned cold, he had been the cornerstone of my professional growth. When I first joined Arcturus Consulting Group, I was 27, sharp, ambitious, and still learning how to navigate the politics of consulting. Gregory was already a legend in the firm. Clients requested him by name. Interns idolized him. Partners deferred to him. He was respected, feared, and, at times, even admired. So when he chose me as his mentee, I was flattered. Gregory introduced me to key clients, offered advice on strategy presentations, and took a visible interest in my development. He once said during a leadership retreat, "Maya doesn't just solve problems, she anticipates them." I beamed with pride. That version of Gregory, the generous mentor, was the one I clung to when the first boundary was crossed. I convinced myself it was a mistake. A compliment taken out of context. A mentor losing sight of lines blurred by proximity and stress. But the truth was more sinister. His behavior wasn't sloppy or confused. It was calculated. After that night near the break room, when he subtly threatened my promotion, I began avoiding being alone with him. I scheduled meetings with doors open, looped in junior staff, and declined every career check-in that landed after 6 p.m. That didn't stop him. "You're slipping, Maya," he texted one Monday morning. "Avoiding me doesn't help your case for director." He was testing me, watching how far he could push, what I would tolerate, how much power he held over me. It felt like drowning while pretending to swim. I confided in Danielle again. My sister is 6 years older, infinitely sharper, and allergic to nonsense. She didn't hesitate. "Start building a timeline," she said. "Don't just collect the messages, track your responses, dates, locations, every escalation. If this goes legal, context is everything." That weekend, I went through every screenshot and voicemail, organizing them by month. I started annotating with timestamps and memory notes. What meeting I had just left, where we were in the building, whether anyone else might have been nearby. I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was building a case. Gregory's behavior grew more erratic. He'd show up at my cubicle unannounced, leaning against the desk like we were old friends. He'd comment on my scent, the fit of my blouse, my serious eyes when I worked. And always with that calm, practiced smile, like none of it could ever be used against him. At a client offsite in Portland, he tried to book me into the room next to his. I caught it during check-in and requested a room on a different floor. That night, I put the desk chair under the doorknob like I was back in college dorms. The next morning, Gregory made a joke during breakfast about my absence at his door. I forced a polite laugh, gripping my coffee mug to hide the tremble in my hand. By late April, the pressure was constant. Every day, I lived with the tension of pretending nothing was wrong, smiling through meetings, keeping my analytics reports sharp, masking the dread crawling beneath my skin. Then came the photo. It was a Tuesday. Rain spattered against the windows like static. I was sitting in the quiet alcove off the 14th floor, finalizing our Q2 risk projections. And then, buzz. I opened the message expecting a data request. Instead, I saw Gregory's face, his body, posed, explicit. The caption, "This could be our little secret. Imagine the possibilities." I stared at my phone, breath caught somewhere between a gasp and a scream. It was grotesque, shameless, and deliberate. There was no mistaking intent now. This wasn't clumsy infatuation. This was weaponized power. I forwarded the message to my encrypted backup folder immediately, then left the office pretending I had a dental appointment. I sat in my car for 30 minutes, forehead against the steering wheel, trying not to cry. What would happen if I went to HR again? Would they believe me? Would the complaint vanish again? Would they twist it around and accuse me of leading him on? I didn't know, but I couldn't stay silent any longer. The next morning, I returned to Michelle Tran, the HR director, and scheduled a formal appointment. This time, I brought printed copies of 10 messages, including the photo. She seemed horrified. At least, that's what her expression said. "This is unacceptable, Maya. We will take immediate action." She took the documents, locked them in a drawer, and promised an update within the week. That was the last I heard from her. Days passed, then a full week. I followed up. No response. Then on Friday afternoon, Michelle finally replied. Short, vague. "No updates at this time. The matter is under review." It was like watching a door slowly close in my face, while the building behind it burned. The following Monday, Gregory summoned me to his office. I hesitated for a moment before entering. When I walked in, he closed the door behind me and leaned against it. "You're making this very difficult, Maya." His voice was quiet, cold, empty of the charm he used to carry so effortlessly. "You think you're the first? You're not. And you won't be the last? But you will be forgotten." I looked him straight in the eye. "You don't get to decide that." That night, I bought a small external hard drive and copied everything. All screenshots, voicemails, recordings, and notes. I made 3 backups. I stored them in separate places. One at home, one in my car, one in a lockbox in my sister's office in San Francisco. Gregory wanted silence. He was about to get the opposite. When people think about betrayal, they imagine backstabbing peers or false friends. But in my case, the most devastating betrayal didn't come from Gregory Landon. It came from human resources, the very department designed to protect employees like me. After Gregory cornered me in his office, making veiled threats about my future and warning that I'd be forgotten, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. That night, I refined my documentation, organizing it into a professional, irrefutable report. The next morning, I walked into Michelle Tran's office with printed copies and a thumb drive. I expected awkward discomfort. What I got was cold detachment. Michelle didn't ask me to sit this time. She didn't offer coffee. Her eyes barely lifted from her screen. "You again?" she said, monotone. "I've updated my file. You'll find additional messages, recordings, and proof of manipulation," I said firmly, placing the folder on her desk. She glanced at it like it was a piece of spam mail. "Thank you, Maya. I'll be sure to pass this along." That was it. No reassurance, no acknowledgement of how serious the content was. As I stepped out of her office, I felt it. The shift. The moment when I was no longer seen as a rising star, but as a threat. The next day, I began noticing changes. A senior partner I often collaborated with stopped replying to my emails. A junior analyst avoided eye contact in the break room. Even my team lead, who I'd mentored since his internship, began giving me one-word answers. Rumors had begun. Gregory's campaign to smear me was in motion. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe people were just busy. Maybe I was overanalyzing. But then, I walked into a strategy session where my chair had been moved. My name tag gone. I stood awkwardly near the door as the team began without me. No one said a word. I wasn't just being excluded, I was being erased. The silence from HR became deafening. For 2 full weeks, no one followed up. When I returned to Michelle's office unannounced, she looked startled, annoyed even. "There's no record of your complaint," she said flatly. I blinked. "What?" She slid open a drawer and pulled out an empty manila folder labeled with my name. "We log every incident, and your file is clean." I stood frozen. The folder I'd delivered, the thumb drive, it was gone. My heart dropped into my stomach. I was being gaslit at a corporate level. When I left Michelle's office, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't panic. I documented everything: the visit, the missing folder, the verbatim exchange. I emailed myself a copy from my personal device, blind carbon copied to Danielle and a secure legal account we'd created just in case. Gregory thought he was burying my story. Instead, he was fueling it. The next 3 weeks were a blur of quiet humiliation. I was left out of client briefings. My project load shrank to almost nothing. People who used to stop by my desk with coffee or strategy questions now scurried past like I was contagious. And then came the final strike. It was a Friday evening. The floor was nearly empty, shadows long across the frosted glass. I was gathering my things when Gregory appeared at my cubicle. He didn't knock, didn't greet me. "I need to see you in my office. Now." I stared at him. "It's after 6. "You're still on the clock. Move." I followed, heart racing, every instinct telling me to run. When we entered, he locked the door. "I want to make this clear, Maya," he said, voice low and steady. "You have one shot to walk away from this without ruining yourself. You think people are going to believe you? You've already lost their respect. You'll be lucky to get an interview at a startup after this." I didn't flinch. I had spent weeks rehearsing this exact moment in my head. "I don't need luck," I said. "I have the truth." His smirk faltered. "You're not as smart as you think." We stood in silence for a beat. Then I walked out. That night, I did what I should have done months ago. I began preparing for war. I gathered every file, every voice recording, every email backup. I uploaded them to multiple secured drives, 1 physical, 2 cloud-based. I printed hard copies and sent them by certified mail to Danielle. I even recorded a video testimony of my entire experience and stored it on an encrypted server. Then I did something unexpected. I researched Arcturus's board of directors, names, bios, email addresses. I created a private dossier. I highlighted 3 people: Evelyn Zhang, chairwoman and advocate for women in business; Omar Bennett, a father of 2 daughters; and Roxanne Alston, recently hired after her last firm was rocked by a harassment scandal. They weren't just names anymore. They were human pressure points. And their quarterly board meeting? 4 days away. On Monday morning, I arrived at the office to find a calendar invite. Subject: Performance Review, Location Confe Room 7B. Time: 10 a.m. required. Attendees: Gregory Landon, Michelle Tran, David Rollins, Chief Operations Officer. I stared at the screen, pulse ticking at my temple. I knew exactly what this was. Not a performance review. An ambush. I arrived 10 minutes early, sat quietly outside the room, reviewed my timeline, my evidence, my backups. At 10:01, I entered the room. Gregory was already seated, flanked by Michelle and David. The air was sterile, heavy with forced professionalism. "Maya," Michelle said, all traces of her earlier concern gone. "We've received complaints that you've been spreading false information and engaging in behavior that violates company policy." I stared at her, so this was it. The trap. "Do you have documentation of these alleged incidents?" David asked. Gregory leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Because I've seen desperate women fabricate things before. It's sad, really." I took a slow breath. "I don't have the materials with me today," I said calmly, "but I'll be happy to share them with the board." Gregory's face twitched. "The board?" he repeated. "That's right," I said, standing. "They'll want to see how seriously you all take legal exposure." Michelle moved to stop me. David cleared his throat. But I walked out, unbothered. They thought they were cutting off my escape. But I wasn't escaping. I was about to step onto the main stage. By the time I left the performance review meeting, my decision was final. I would take everything to the board. Quiet strategies and internal channels had failed. HR had buried the truth. My mentor had become my predator. And now they were preparing to publicly erase me. But I wasn't going to disappear. I went home that night and reviewed my plan. I mapped out the timeline again, added new incidents, and adjusted the presentation I had begun sketching after my sister Danielle first warned me this might escalate. By morning, I was calm, focused. If they wanted war, I would bring facts. Tuesday passed in silence. No emails, no calls. Just sidelong glances when I walked through the office, hushed conversations I wasn't invited into, and the same sense of isolation that had grown thicker by the day. I kept my head down, replied to my remaining clients, and transferred my remaining notes to my personal laptop. A countdown clock ticked in the back of my mind. The quarterly board meeting was Thursday, and I was going to be there. But first came Wednesday morning, when they made their final move. At 8:16 a.m., I received a calendar invite from Michelle Tran. Subject: HR follow-up location, conference room. 5C attendees: Michelle Tran, Gregory Landon, Thomas Avery, managing partner. Time: 10 a.m. No explanation, just another meeting, but the names said it all. I arrived 10 minutes early again, this time in a navy blue suit, the same one I wore during my promotion interview 2 years earlier. I'd straightened my hair, polished my heels. I looked calm, composed. They wouldn't get the satisfaction of seeing me afraid. Inside the room sat Gregory, Michelle, and Thomas Avery, Arcturus's managing partner, who rarely involved himself in HR matters. A fourth seat was empty. Mine. "Please sit, Maya," Thomas said, his voice stiff. I nodded once, placing my leather folder on the table, though I had no intention of opening it. "We've received credible reports," Michelle began, reading from a prepared statement, "that you've made baseless accusations against Mr. Landon, damaging his reputation and violating company standards." My stomach turned, but my face didn't flinch. Gregory folded his hands theatrically. "This has been deeply hurtful," he said. "I've always supported Maya's career. These attacks are unfounded, and honestly, I'm shocked." He looked directly at me, like we were in a courtroom drama. "You're destroying my reputation over a misunderstanding." "You destroyed your own career," I replied calmly. "I just kept the receipts." Thomas's expression shifted slightly, but he kept to the agenda. "Do you have any documentation of these claims?" This was it. The trap. If I handed it over now, they could discredit it, claim fabrication, twist it before the board saw it. I smiled slightly. I don't have it with me today, I said, but I'll be presenting it to the board tomorrow. Gregory scoffed. Of course you will. We're placing you on administrative leave pending an internal investigation, Michelle announced. Effective immediately. You'll surrender all company property before leaving the premises. There it was. They thought it was checkmate. But I had prepared for this too. My documentation had never touched company servers. My backups were all on personal encrypted systems. I had everything I needed on a small, rose gold external hard drive in my purse, and 3 cloud accounts tied to secure emails Danielle and I had created months ago. I stood slowly, reached into my bag, and removed my company laptop and phone, placing them on the table. Noted, I said. And I trust the board will be notified of the action taken today? Michelle blinked. That's not standard proced. It will be tomorrow. I turned to leave. Maya, Gregory said, but I didn't look back. The walk through the office was slow and silent. Word had already spread. People turned in their chairs as I passed. Some whispered. Some avoided eye contact. A few, very few, offered sympathetic glances. I stopped at my desk, opened the drawer, and retrieved one final item, a flash drive with select redacted files prepared for the board presentation, my insurance policy. As I packed the last of my personal belongings into a cardboard box, I caught my reflection in the window. Not broken, not bitter, resolved. That night, I met Danielle for dinner at a quiet bistro overlooking Elliott Bay. You're sure you want to go public? She asked, stirring her tea. If I don't, how many more women will this happen to? She nodded. Then you need to be strategic. Lead with the timeline, keep it professional, and let the board connect the dots. Already working on it, I said, pulling out my laptop. I showed her the outline, dates, messages, audio transcripts, names. You did everything right, she said, quietly proud. Now finish it. That evening, as I finalized my presentation, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. A single message. You're not the first. Be strong tomorrow. No name, no context. But I knew what it meant. Somewhere in that building, someone else had gone through this. Someone else had been silenced. But not this time. The next morning, I dressed carefully. I wore the same heels I'd worn to my very first client pitch. A gold necklace my mother gave me when I got the job at Arcturus, and the navy suit. Polished, professional, unshakably calm. At 8:30 a.m., I arrived at headquarters and told the front desk, I'm here to speak with the board. The receptionist looked confused. Do you have an appointment? No, but I have evidence of corporate misconduct and legal risk. Her eyes widened slightly. 10 minutes later, I was escorted to the executive floor, waiting, watching through glass as the board members filtered in. Gregory was already there, confidently chatting over coffee. He had no idea what was coming. Through the frosted glass, I could see the board members settling into their leather chairs. Gregory Landon stood at the head of the long table, gesturing confidently at a screen behind him as he wrapped up his quarterly performance review. The air in that boardroom seemed light, casual. Applause followed his closing remarks. He was winning, but not for long. At exactly 9:59 a.m., Evelyn Zhang, chairwoman of the board, stepped out into the hallway to meet me. She was composed and direct. Ms. Kendall, she said, scanning my expression, I understand you requested to address the board about a matter of legal concern? Yes, ma'am. It involves documented misconduct and a pattern of suppression by senior leadership and HR. If left unaddressed, it exposes Arcturus to significant legal risk. Evelyn studied me for a moment, then gave a single nod. You'll speak next. I followed her into the boardroom, aware that every step I took shifted the ground beneath Gregory's carefully constructed lies. The board members glanced up, confused. A few whispered. Gregory, seated now, looked stunned for a fraction of a second before masking it with a smug smile. "I'm not sure why Maya is here," he said smoothly. "She's currently on administrative leave pending an internal investigation." Evelyn raised a hand. "We're aware. Miss Kendall, please proceed." I connected my laptop to the projector and took a steady breath. I had practiced this moment dozens of times, but standing here, with 9 of the most powerful people in Seattle's business scene staring back at me, the weight of it all threatened to crush me. I looked down at my notes, then let them go. "Thank you for allowing me to speak," I began. "I'm here to present evidence of sustained sexual harassment by Mr. Gregory Landon and a coordinated effort by our HR department to suppress my formal complaints. I have over 300 documented incidents, text messages, voicemails, and internal interactions spanning 4 months." A murmur passed around the room. Gregory shifted in his seat. I clicked to the first slide, a screenshot of his February message. "You look beautiful when you're focused. I've been watching you from my office." Below it, the date, time, and metadata confirming the source. One by one, I presented the evidence, messages that began as compliments and gradually devolved into graphic, explicit propositions. "This message was sent during business hours," I said, pointing to one text. "This one was sent minutes after a team meeting. This one includes a photo I was forced to blur for your comfort." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Omar Bennett leaned forward, reading the text carefully. Roxanne Alston, who had spent the last year rebuilding her career after a harassment scandal destroyed her previous firm, wrote furiously in her notebook. Gregory cut in. "Anyone can fabricate screenshots," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "This is a coordinated attack." "Which is why," I replied calmly, "I've also brought the original data. Metadata, audio recordings, multiple backups stored independently, and testimony from my initial meeting with HR, documented in real time." I clicked to a slide showing the timeline of my meeting with Michelle Tran, including emails and a typed memo I'd written the moment I left her office. 2 weeks after submitting this complaint, I followed up. I was told no such meeting had occurred and no documentation existed. Patricia Norris, another board member and attorney, raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Kendall, are you stating that HR actively destroyed your complaint?" "Yes, and the files I gave them." I continued for another 12 minutes, laying out each phase of Gregory's behavior, HR's inaction, and the firm's attempt to discredit me. I ended with one final slide, a screenshot of the anonymous text I received the night before. "You're not the first. Be strong tomorrow." The room fell into a tense, deafening silence. Gregory finally stood, his face pale. "This is a smear campaign," he barked. "I've built this firm for 20 years. This woman was struggling professionally, and when things didn't go her way—" "Sit down, Mr. Landon," Evelyn said sharply. "We will hear Ms. Kendall in full." His mouth opened, then shut. I handed over a sealed USB drive with the entire report. Patricia accepted it. "Everything is here. Duplicates have been sent to legal counsel and stored off-site. Nothing can be altered." I took steps to ensure integrity. "Thank you, Ms. Kendall," Evelyn said. "We'll reconvene privately." As I packed up, Gregory tried one more time. "Maya, please," he said, dropping the smugness. "Don't destroy my family over a misunderstanding." I turned, meeting his eyes. "You destroyed your family the moment you decided to abuse your power. I just stopped covering for you." Outside the boardroom, I stood by the window overlooking the city. My heart finally slowed. My hands no longer trembled. 6 years of silent strength had led me to this exact moment. At 11:42 a.m., Danielle called. "It's already spreading through the industry," she said. "People are talking. Major players are watching this unfold in real time." "I didn't do this to make noise," I said. "No," she replied, But sometimes the truth is noise, the kind people can't ignore. At 4:26 p.m., I watched from the coffee shop across the street as Gregory Landon walked out of Arcturus Consulting Group with a single cardboard box and a security escort. His shoulders slumped. His career? Over. And me? My real story was just beginning. Gregory Landon's fall from grace was swift. There was no press release, no carefully crafted company memo, just an internal email stating that Mr. Landon has decided to part ways with Arcturus Consulting Group, effective immediately. But the silence didn't stop the story from spreading. By the following morning, industry blogs and professional networks buzzed with speculation and quiet celebration. A few even used my name, boldly, proudly, linking it to phrases like whistleblower courage, impeccable documentation, and a textbook case of corporate accountability. I didn't ask for attention, but in finally telling the truth, I became impossible to ignore. 2 days after the boardroom reckoning, Michelle Tran, the HR director who erased my original complaint, was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. The board launched an independent audit of Arcturus's harassment and reporting procedures. Within a week, 2 more women, a junior project coordinator and a former intern, stepped forward with their own stories about Gregory. Their timelines and experiences overlapped mine almost exactly. I wasn't the first, but I was the first to be believed. And that made all the difference. Gregory's lawyer tried to spin a counter-narrative. He released a statement to the press claiming his client was the victim of a coordinated character assassination led by disgruntled employees. But the evidence was overwhelming. The digital trail, the timelines, the recordings, the message that started it all, the one about how I looked when I worked late, became the lead-in for every article covering the story. I've been watching you from my office. One sentence, a career undone. Justice doesn't always wear a cape. Sometimes it's just a woman with a folder full of receipts. 3 weeks after Gregory's termination, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Kendall?" a voice said. "This is Rebecca Morrison, senior partner at Apex Strategy Collective." I blinked. Apex was one of the top boutique consulting firms on the West Coast, Arcturus's direct competitor. "I've been following your situation closely," she continued. "What you did took incredible courage, and frankly, it's exactly the kind of integrity we value at Apex." Then she made an offer that stopped me cold. Director of Risk Strategy, a 40% salary increase, full autonomy over your division, and the freedom to build your own team from the ground up. My voice cracked when I said thank you. Not because of the money, but because she spoke to me with something I hadn't felt in months. Respect. On my first day at Apex, Rebecca introduced me to the leadership team with words I'll never forget. "This is Maya Kendall. She's here because she chose what was right over what was easy. She'll do the same for all of you." The office was different, brighter. The air didn't feel like it held secrets. Colleagues greeted me with sincerity, not suspicion. It felt like something I'd forgotten I could have in a workplace. Safety. A week into the job, I received a handwritten letter. No return address. Inside was a single sentence. "Because you spoke up, I found my voice too. Thank you." No signature, just solidarity. Whoever wrote it didn't need me to know their name. They just needed me to know I'd made a difference. I spoke at 2 conferences in the months that followed. One on ethical leadership, another on building safe reporting cultures in corporate environments. Danielle helped me draft policy suggestions now being considered by 3 mid-size firms. My inbox began filling with messages from women across the country. "Your story gave me courage. I'm documenting everything now, just like you did. You reminded me I'm not crazy. I never asked to be a symbol, but if my story could keep one woman from sitting in silence, from doubting herself, from thinking no one would believe her, then it was worth it. One evening, I stood by the window of my new corner office on the 23rd floor overlooking downtown Seattle. A storm rolled in across the sound, but inside, everything was still. I thought about the woman I was 6 months ago, scared, isolated, holding her phone in a parking garage with shaking hands. And I thought about the woman I was now, not fearless, but free. Gregory had tried to bury me in silence. Instead, he built the platform I used to rise. He thought he had the power. But the truth? The power had been mine all along,